I'm going to have my final Schlitz. All that and more on Beer in Front. Sometimes the beer in front of you is the best one yet. This is Beer in Front. Every week I'll talk to people in and around the beer world and get their stories all about beer. That's Beer in Front, and it's coming up now. Welcome to episode 304 of Beer in Front. I'm your host, Dave Zalatoris, and Beer in Front is a charter member of the Beer Media Group. I'm going up to Washington State. I'm going to talk to Thomas Croskrey. He's from Emrys Beer and Mead Works. That was a lot of fun talking to him. I haven't talked about mead that much on the show, but it's always a favorite of mine, but there's just not a lot of places around here. But Emrys looks like a great spot, so we're going to catch his story, find out more about Emrys, the beer and the meads that they're putting out. That was fun. I hope you're going to enjoy that interview. That's coming up in just a couple of minutes. I was a guest on another podcast that'll be coming out later, the US of NA. So John Eggleton, who I've talked to before, I've had him on this show. I've been on his before. I did another piece that'll be coming out there. So if you're not tired of hearing my voice, you could check out the US of NA, and that'll be coming out later this week. Future episodes, I'm going to be talking. There's a guy in Kansas City that is trying to get Jason Kelsey to run with the Bulls in Pamplona. My buddy Devin, he's doing it. He's run with the Bulls before. He's doing it again this year, and he's drinking a garage beer every day online to get Jason Kelsey to run with it. So that's going to come out next week. That was cool as well. I'm going to be talking to the American Beer Company and get their story. So a lot of fun things in the works coming up. But this episode's really cool with Emrys Beer and Mead Works. I'm not going to do a news segment. We talked a lot of news on the Midwest Beer Show. You could catch that over on YouTube. I do that bi-weekly with Rod J from Rod J Beer Ventures. We had a lot of good stuff to discuss, beer news happening around the Midwest, and we did some other things as well. So if you want to get your news fix, check out the Midwest Beer Show. Later on in this episode, I'm going to have a great beer from Illinois. And as I teased in the intro, I'm going to have my final Schlitz. Schlitz is no longer, and I have one last bottle that I picked up. There might be some tears shed, but I'm also going to have my final Schlitz. So stay tuned. This is a great episode coming up now. All right, welcome back. Emrys Beer and Mead Works. They're located at 21850 East Wellington Parkway, Liberty Lake, Washington. They're putting out beer, they're putting out mead, and I'm looking at the menu. They're putting out some food too. Like, I'm hungry. I'm looking at the website here. I'm going to talk today from Emrys, Thomas Croskrey. Thomas, thank you so much. You know, we talked a couple weeks ago when we did the thing with Rod J, so it's nice to talk to you in person.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for having me.
I mean, I need to get myself out to Washington. Like, where in Washington? Like, what would be the closest airport to fly into?
Spokane.
Spokane. Okay. Because
Yeah.
I'm looking at this. I'm like, damn, their beers look good. Their meats look good. I'm looking at like some smash burgers on here. I'm like,
Heck yeah.
I'm starving. I could go out there.
Yeah, good stuff.
Well, you've been brewing for well over a decade, and you had this vision of beer and mead under one roof for years. What finally made Emrys the right moment for you to bring that to life?
Well, it kind of came down to regulation, actually. My first jump into commercial brewing was a place called Bellwether Brewing over in Spokane. And my first vision there was to do beer and mead under the same roof. At the time, the TTB didn't facilitate that kind of licensing because beer, of course, has a brewing license, but mead has a wine license. So Yeah, so we would have to get dual licensing as a brewery and a meadery, and until I think it was 2016, but until 2016, they didn't facilitate that. In 2016, I talked to my then partner, and I was like, "Hey, you knew this is what I wanted to do. I think we kind of want to jump over and work on this project now." So that's what I did.
Is there a chapter or any lessons that you learned from Bellwether that, helped you shape what Emrys is today?
Sure. Yeah, we did a lot of experimental stuff at Bellwether. Really steeped it real deep in history, doing Groot beers, non-hopped beers, sour stuff like the original micro, not just kettle sours, but long aging sours and things like that. We did braggots because I really wanted to do mead, but braggot was about the closest thing I could do at Bellwether. But yeah, we were kind of the weird ones in town, and it showed me just what not only Spokane, but even kind of the greater beer industry as well as drinkers clientele we're looking for. And sometimes you don't know what you're looking for until it's available, and that's kind of what I was playing with there.
Well, mead, and I'm not a huge mead person. I like what I've had, but it's not easily found, or at least by me. But if you go to like places like on tap, if you look at like the top places, the top highest rated things that on tap, they're all meads. Like, was there this, I don't know, light bulb moment, if you will, where you realized this wasn't a side project, but this could be your core focus?
Yeah. So when I first just jumped into excuse me, home brewing and all that stuff, it was with the idea of jumping into it commercially. So that was the intent from the beginning of learning home brewing. And through all that, I've also kind of been a history nerd. I just really enjoy, especially European history, Celtic history, that kind of thing. So I was learning, reading up on how they brewed beers, and then I was like, "Oh, this honey mead thing." I had kind of heard of it before, but I wasn't real familiar years ago, and just started learning more about it that way, and wanted to kind of dive in. I've always had this kind of liking to be out on the verge of things. I don't necessarily like being right in the center of, say, the cultural stream, if you will. So I like being a little on the outskirts of those kinds of things, and mead felt like a great opportunity for that.
Well, mead has been around forever. It's ancient,
Mhm.
but yeah, a lot of people misunderstand it. What do you think is the biggest misconception that you're constantly correcting with people about mead?
That it has to be sweet.
Okay.
Everybody just thinks it's a big sugar bomb. It's made out of honey, and that's just partly. A lot of people don't even necessarily understand that without yeast, beer would be super sweet and cloying and sugary and awful. But yeah, yeast takes all that sugar, dries it out real nice, and mead can be very sweet. I'm sure a lot of people listening are like, "Well, I've had super sweet mead." Certainly can be, but it can also be very just bone dry.
You describe Emrys as historical modern fusion. What does that actually look like? Is I'm drinking it in a pint glass.
Sure. So one of my favorite expressions of that is something I've got a style, if you will, called Groot IPA. So Groot is an ancient European beer that predates the usage of hops, and there could have been any manner of herbs and spices in there, whether it was from the garden or from the forest or from the spice trade or whatever. Come along, come along, Reinheitsgebot, that kind of era, then hops really started to take over, not only by law, but by culture. A lot of the world was kind of switching over to hops usage for beer. And so, kind of fast forward, and then we've got IPAs. IPAs are very plentiful. There are a lot of different sub styles. So, I just decided to kind of marry those two. So, we take any style of currently accepted IPA, West Coast, a hazy, or whatever, add a couple of botanicals to that, and I've got what I call a Groot IPA, and I kind of marry that ancient practice of botanicals with that modern practice of big juicy hops.
Like going back to mead for a second, like
Mhm.
when you're coming up with recipes, how is it different between the two? Like you have to wear two different hats. You have your beer recipe hat on or your mead recipe? Like, how is the thought process different between the two?
Yeah. So in some ways, I feel like mead is almost a little bit more versatile, just in terms. I mean, you can have a 15% still mead, or you can have a 4% carbonated mead. It can be infused with fruits or botanicals or anything else. A lot of that you can do with beer as well. But I find that honey, depending on how you use it, if you're back sweetening or whatnot, kind of tends to stay a little more out of the way than say malt does. So I've got a lot more, I don't know, of a palate, if you will, being able to use different, more delicate ingredients. I mean, one is even one that comes to mind at the moment is peaches. Peaches really get lost in beer, but you can have still really nice peach kind of profile on a mead because they're just a little bit more delicate. Again,
Okay.
if you're going to back sweeten real heavily, then that is not so delicate. But
Is there like, I'm trying to think how I could phrase this here. What's been the biggest like technical challenge in producing both beer and mead at like the same facility at the same time?
yeah, probably
And
the
at a high
biggest one.
level too. You're not just
Yeah,
doing it, you're doing it at a high level.
yeah. Really, two things come to mind. Is one is like I mentioned, mead requires a wine license, and that's taxed on a totally different rate, totally different set of regulations than beer is. So behind the scenes, it's I won't say nightmare, but there's just a lot more going on in terms of having two sets of taxes, two sets of reporting, that kind of thing. On the more creative side of things, from a customer point of view, we get a lot of people asking, "Well, mead must be gluten free," and I'm like, "Well, I am brewing. I've got grain, I've got barley, wheat, and rye, so I can't guarantee that this is gluten free, but there are no gluten containing ingredients." I can say it that way. So probably one of those two things. Those come up quite a bit. Kind of differentiating the two and having them share a house.
Do you have like different sets of fermenters for both, or is this something that you're able to do on the same equipment?
I do mostly use the same equipment. There's very little that's totally dedicated. Of course, I do go through real deep cleaning between each batch anyway,
Yeah.
but I really pay attention to it when I'm going from beer to mead, just again to kind of pull that grain out and all that.
I saw something else. I think it was the Spokane Journal where you were talking about like local sourcing and local grains. How much does terroir show up in your beer and mead?
Yeah, I would say on the beer side, pretty extensively, or very, I don't know, obviously maybe. All of our grain on the beer side is coming from within about 100 miles of the brewery.
Oh, sweet.
It's grown over an area called the Palouse. For the most part, there's some of it outside of that region, and then it's all malted about a 10-minute drive away. So beer side, I'm really happy with that. We've got, of course, Washington Yakima hops just growing out our ears. So I'm super blessed just saying that that's the part of my region as well. Mead side, it's been a little bit more difficult securing that much honey.
Okay.
I've talked with a lot of different suppliers, and they always look at me like, so I'm using close to 20,000 pounds a year. And apiaries will be like, I can't support all, or I can't supply all that. So I'm kind of going through a few different suppliers, but I have had to import some amount of honey just for the amount that I need.
Yeah.
So working towards getting some more regional suppliers in that regard. But yeah, definitely beer side, very terroir. Mead side, you can really tell which batch, from batch to batch, where I'm using that honey. If I explain to somebody, taste this one, taste that one, and then tell them, well, this one came from Montana, this one came from maybe Pennsylvania, and they're like, man, I can really tell that difference.
Kind of off the subject, but you keep reading stuff on the news about the bees are going away and all of that. Has it been more difficult to source, honey?
So and that kind of goes ebbs and flows a little bit each year. There's definitely some years that are much stronger, some years that are a little weaker. For the most part, one thing to just kind of consider is that honeybees are an agricultural animal. And so that's the way that we're treating them. There's definitely a lot of insecticides and herbicides that play into that. Without getting like crazy deep into that part of it, it just plays differently from year to year. There was one honey supplier I was using, and I was hoping they were going to grow, but they got nailed by a really bad year, and it almost put them out of business. So unfortunately, they're growing back up, they're getting their business going again, but they weren't able to supply anything this year.
Oh, wow. Well,
Yeah.
we'll get back to Emrys here. I mean, we talked before, you have beer, you have mead, you have food. How intentional was it when everything was starting up to get that full experience with everything together?
Yeah, it was definitely something that I wanted to do. I wanted to stay kind of that brewery meadery focus that had a kitchen, and I certainly didn't want it to be just a throwaway of I don't know if I'm insulting anybody, but just some boiled hot dogs. And, I wanted it to be a good experience. So we hired a real chef, and she's working the day to day. She's designing that menu. She's training the crew. Sauces are made in house. Our beef patties, they're made in house. Trying to think of some other stuff, but yeah, it's a very chef driven menu, and that was very intentional. Wanted to have that kind of full experience, and it's really taken off. The restaurant side of things has been doing really well.
I'm looking at some tacos here on this menu. Oh, that's a good looking taco. I just had to zoom in on the picture.
Yeah. It's a fairly small menu. It all fits on one page, but there's something for everybody. I mean, we definitely wanted to make sure that it was still had some variance to it, and it wasn't just like we had two options or whatever.
Yeah. Smash burgers and mead is not exactly your traditional pairing, but obviously it works surprisingly well. Were there other things that were a pleasant surprise when, coming up with your team with the food menu and what you have on tap there?
Yeah, some good synergy there. We definitely found that people are, I don't know, more, I don't want to say excited, but they're more familiar with the beer side of things. And so beer and burgers, yeah, that's a great combo. Everybody knows that one. A lot of times when we say we do beer and mead, they'll hear beer and meat. So they think we're a butchery or something. I'm like, no, not quite. We're not packaging our own beef for the burgers.
That could be like your next thing down the road in 20 years. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. But no, but it's been really cool seeing the willingness for people to try new things and getting more familiar with mead and that kind of stuff.
Every area is different. So, I mean, I know nothing about your area there, but, community and the experience is so important nowadays in beer. What is like, all right, we're doing this on a Tuesday. So, what does a random Tuesday look like at Emrys?
Tuesdays is one of our slower days. But yeah, we used to have people coming in, a lot of people, especially for like lunch. We don't have as many alcohol sales, but then we that pivots out into the later hours. Heck, tonight we're actually having something called beer choir, and everybody's coming in and going to sing hymns about beers. So
Oh, nice. I like that. That's something different. That's not like your trivia night. That's something that's pretty
right.
cool. I like that. What kind of a crowd are you expecting for that?
We usually fill it out.
Oh, wow.
Our space downstairs holds actually about 75 people,
Oh,
and it's
nice.
usually pretty packed out. Sometimes we'll have standing room only for beer choir and
Oh, that's awesome. That's other
yeah,
people listening. See, now you've got
yeah,
something. You got something to do. Beer choir. I like that.
yeah.
Where do you see mead? Where do you see mead going in, say, the next 10 years?
Sure. So if you look at stats, it is growing. It's growing significantly. More breweries or more meaderies are popping up relatively frequently. A stat that I used to share, and I need to update this, but a stat that I used to share a few years ago was there were the same number of meaderies in the entire country as there were breweries in just the state of Washington. And a lot of those meaderies are actually wineries that happen to produce maybe one mead, but they're not dedicated meaderies,
Okay.
which is fine. But just as context, that's where that is. But I see it really growing, especially on our carbonated lower alcohol meads. They drink a lot like seltzers. They're a little less filling. They don't have quite the carbohydrate count and the calories. So we do see a lot of people kind of gravitating to it for that reason. Unless you're back sweetening, they're nice and dry, don't have a lot of sugar in them. So yeah, I think there's a little bit of a health conscious thing there. I mean, people know it's still alcohol, so you gotta
Mhm.
watch that for that. But yeah, I'm seeing that. I'm also toying around. I haven't done a ton of it, but toying around with some non-alcoholic meads, which people are like, what does that mean? But basically, the mead side of a non-alcoholic beer, same
Mhm.
kind of idea.
Or would you do something like that with like a different yeast strain? Or, I mean, there's a few different ways you could do like a non alcoholic beer. Like, what style are you kicking around for doing something like that?
Yeah, so far what I've done is added just enough honey to reach about 0.4% alcohol and then
Okay.
go ahead and ferment it.
All right, cool.
Yeah, that's what I've been doing so far on it.
All right, let me get you out of here with some softball ones here. So, if you could only drink one, you have to choose here. What are you going to do? Your best mead or your best, say, Pilsner?
Oh man. Right. I think I'd go for a mead. I'd reach for a mead.
All right. Is what's the wildest ingredient that you've ever thought about putting into a mead, but you haven't done it yet?
Hmm, that I haven't done yet.
Yeah.
Um, well, something similar to like an oyster stout. I've thought about using oysters or even octopus or something like that in a mead. I've done some lobster beers, so that's been weird on the beer side. I haven't quite introduced that on the mead side yet.
I'm not going to argue with you. You know far more than I do. I don't know if I would do a lobster beer, but
Yeah.
maybe like a fried calamari one or something like that. Yeah. If you
Uh,
could collaborate with anyone, whether it's somebody in beer, somebody in mead, what's your like ideal bucket list collaboration?
oh man, that's a great one because there's a lot out there. I really would. I mean, just on a personal level, and we've gone back and forth. I used to work for, and they're dear friends of mine, a meadery called Hierophant Meadery. They're currently on Whidbey Island, while we're on the other side of the state from me. They're here in Washington. I'd love to work with them. I actually, it would be really fun to do some like a braggot beer meets mead um, with another brewery. I don't necessarily have a name of a brewery that I'd love to do that with, but doing bringing some mead side stuff, or even having somebody come to my facility and just doing a mead with me, just a straight mead. I would love to get more of those meads out there and kind of just spread the word a little bit.
Awesome. Well, what's the one thing you want people to understand about Emrys before they walk through the door?
That we've got something that pretty well everybody can go after. We've got, of course, our non-alcoholic selections. We've got still mead that's going to drink and present more like wine. We've got those carbonated meads. We've got a full selection of beer. But yeah, that we're a place that you can get something that's familiar, culturally in the industry. A straightforward IPA. We've got our golden lager. We've got a brown porter on right now. But we've also got something that if you want to have a little beverage adventure, we've got our Groot IPA, we've got our meads, we've got something to keep it interesting.
Thomas, I thank you so much for coming on. Once again, if you're in the Washington area, you got to check out Emrys. Once again, they're at 21850 East Wellington Parkway in Liberty Lake. Thomas, best of luck to you going forward. Thank you for
Oh,
coming on.
hey,
I got
thank
to come
you.
out one of these days for a smash burger and those tacos, my man.
Oh, I'd love to have you. Absolutely.
All right. Thanks. We'll see you down the road.
Thank you, Dave.
All right. I'm going to try a new one from Hopewell Brewing here in the city of Chicago. I'm intrigued. This is Pocha Korean Lager. There's some words in Korean which I don't understand. It has the artwork is really cool. I'm big ups to the artwork here, but it has like an old fashioned like stool that you would see in grammar school. There's Korean lager, there's words in Korean, but Hopewell is here in Chicago. I like everything they do. So I'm really intrigued by this. It's a lager, 5% alcohol. Let's crack it open. It pours nice, a lot of foam on this, but a really beautiful golden crystal clear color here. Like I said, a lot of foam. It smells good. It's definitely has a little different aroma to it. And I don't know if there's anything else like an adjunct in there or like if there's rice or anything. But the aroma is definitely different than just your traditional lager. But let's give it a taste. It's definitely rice in there, or I think it's rice. It tastes really good. I love the flavor. I love the finish on this. It has some like malt sweetness there. There's some definite other sweetness involved, but it's really good. Let me grab another sip. I'm definitely getting some rice out of this, and I don't know if it's like a jasmine rice. It's definitely a totally different like taste that hits you. I like this a lot. I think it's really good. There's definite malt sweetness, and you definitely get that like rice like feel. I don't know what the IBUs, I don't know what hops they use in this. I think this is good. Like, I need to go to Jungbu and get some wings or get something else from them and have this with this Pocha lager. I'm a fan. So if you're in the Chicago area and you see this, I'll try to post a picture on Instagram or something like that. I think this is a really good beer. I'm gonna grab one more sip. No, definitely big fan. If you see this one and you're a fan of lagers, you want something a little different. You want something different than your traditional lager. I think this has an interesting taste profile that it might not be for everybody, but I like it. So if you see Pocha Korean lager from Hopewell Brewing in Chicago, you know what to do. Put it in the cart. All right. It's a sad day. It's my last Schlitz. As you may have heard, it's no longer. They were owned by Pabst. Pabst is discontinuing the line. Maybe if they put more effort into it, it would have sold. Maybe if you stopped selling pickle beers, it would have sold. But I digress. It's my last Schlitz. So I'm going to pour it in this nice retro glass that my wife bought. You're saying, Dave, the glass looks yellow. I mentioned this before, like, why are the glasses yellow? Turns out back in the day, they put arsenic in the glass. So I don't know, if I'm not around, if I go the way of Schlitz, you'll know why it was the yellow glass. But let's bust open the final Schlitz. It looks great. Looks great in this glass. It looks more yellow than usual, but it's the arsenic. It smells good. It just smells like a classic beer. So let's give it a taste. That's solid. That was always my favorite of the macros that are out there. Plenty of other beers I like better than this, but if you're just grabbing a macro, this was my favorite. You know, the story is long. I've mentioned it plenty of times on videos and in the podcast. You can go back and listen to them about the story of Schlitz. But it was a great beer. Back in the day, it was the top-selling beer. This is really good. Let me grab one more sip. Excellent. Excellent beer. Nice malt character there. You get some good hop bitterness. I'm a fan. So if you happen to see any in your travels, grab it because you're not going to find it anymore. Rest in peace, Schlitz. Not a good day. That's going to wrap things up for this edition of Beer in Front. I thank you for listening. I want to thank Thomas Croskrey from Emrys Beer and Mead Works. If you're in the Washington State area, you got to check them out. Have a great week, everyone. Have a great Memorial Day weekend. I'll talk to you next week. And remember, the beer or the mead in front of you is the best one yet.